Adrian personally sent me to prison. My world instantly collapsed. For the sake of his first love, he pushed me into the abyss. The laughable thing is, he came to visit me every single month. He would sit on the other side of the visiting room, watching me in silence. And every time, the guard would repeat my words. The inmate refuses the visit. For 2 years, I never once saw him. I refused to see him, and I refused to forgive. I don't know why he came. I only know that my hatred has never waned. Once I get out, everything will be turned upside down. Inmate 9527, you have a visitor. The cold, mechanical voice echoed down the prison corridor, striking everyone's eardrums. I paused the part one was polishing, and without a single tremor in my hands, placed it steadily on the assembly line. The inmates around me cast looks of pity or schadenfreude, their whispers like insects crawling in a damp corner. It must be that CEO Adrian again. Right, he's persistent. Rain or shine, TSK. He sends his own fiancée to prison and then shows up every month to play the devoted lover. Who's he putting on a show for? 9527 is a tough one, though. 2 years, and she hasn't seen him once. I paid them no mind. Pulling off my dirty gloves and following the guard to the visiting room I knew all too well. Every step felt like walking on a poison-laced blade. The iron door clanged shut behind me, sealing off all sound. I sat on the cold metal chair and picked up the telephone, which always smelled of disinfectant. On the other side of the glass partition sat a blurry figure. I didn't need to see clearly to know who it was. Adrian, that name, once the creed of my entire youth, was now a poisonous curse that gnawed at my bones in my midnight nightmares. I didn't even have to look at him to imagine his appearance. An expensive tailored suit, immaculate hair, and that handsome face that once made my heart race. Was it now etched with guilt, or a business-as-usual indifference? I picked up the receiver, and without a moment's hesitation, I spoke to the monitoring guard beside me, my voice as calm as stagnant water. Tell him I refuse to see him. With that, I hung up the phone. The receiver hit the base with a sharp click. The guard was clearly used to this monthly ritual. He picked up his own receiver and repeated my words with a sigh. Mr. Quinn, the inmate, Stella, she refuses the visit. I didn't linger for another second. I stood, turned, and walked toward the iron door that separated me from freedom. As the door opened, I caught a glimpse of the figure on the other side of the glass in the reflection of the smooth doorknob. He was still sitting there, motionless. 2 years, 730 days. He had come 24 times. I had refused him 24 times. And my hatred, in those 24 refusals, had been honed to the sharpness of a razor. Back in my cell, I lay on the hard wooden plank and closed my eyes. But my memory uncontrollably rewound to that hellish afternoon 2 years ago. The CEO's office on the top floor of the Quinn Corporation building. The sun was bright, and the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a bustling city skyline. I was still wearing the diamond engagement ring he had given me, happily discussing the details of our wedding next month. But he pushed a file in front of me, his voice colder than I had ever heard it. Stella, this is the evidence of you embezzling $20 million of company funds using your position. I froze, my mind a complete blank. Adrian, what are you talking about? I picked up the file, my hands trembling. Every transaction listed clearly pointed to me, and the signature was in my handwriting. Impossible, I didn't do this. I shot to my feet, nearly screaming. He just watched me calmly, the face I had loved for 8 years showing not a single trace of emotion. The evidence is conclusive, he said, each of the 4 words a heavy hammer shattering my world. The office door opened, and several uniformed police officers walked in. I looked at Adrian in despair, searching his face for any hint of a joke, any sign of pity. There was nothing, only a deathly, icy coldness. Just as the handcuffs were being snapped onto my wrists, I saw Sophie standing behind Adrian, his first love, the woman who always wore an expression of fragile innocence. Her lips were curved in a barely perceptible, victorious smirk. In that instant, I understood everything. In the beginning, I was like a caged animal, frantically throwing myself against the bars, screaming of my innocence. All I got in return was ruthless suppression and deeper despair. The veterans in the cell block saw that I had once been a pampered young lady and found all sorts of ways to bully me. They stole my food, tore my books, and poured cold water on my blanket in the middle of the night. I didn't cry. I didn't beg for mercy. Tears are the most useless thing in this world. One time, the most arrogant of them, the self-proclaimed leader, came to steal my freshly issued bread roll. I didn't resist. I let her take it. The next day, she broke out in a red rash all over her body, scratching and rolling on the floor in agony before being rushed to the infirmary. No one knew that I remembered perfectly well her allergy to the cheap face cream she used, and that the night before, while everyone was asleep, I had secretly sprinkled her allergen into it. After that, no one dared to mess with me again. They began to fear me, because I was ruthless, and I was quiet. A quiet enemy is far more terrifying than a screaming one. I began to use every resource available. I used my meager prison wages to bribe the guard in charge of the library in exchange for books on law and business strategy. By day, I was the numbly toiling inmate, number 9527. By night, when everyone was asleep, I devoured that knowledge by the faint light filtering in from the hallway. Every legal clause, every business case, became a cornerstone of my revenge plan. I pricked up my ears, listening to the guards' idle chatter about the outside world, listening to new inmates talk about life beyond these walls. I hear the Quinn Corporation just won the bid for that land in the South District. CEO Quinn is so young and capable, right? And that girlfriend of his, Sophie, she's in the news every day, either doing charity work or attending galas. She's living the high life. These words were like needles, stabbing into my heart. The more it hurt, the clearer my mind became. I spent my 28th birthday in prison. No cake, no well wishes. My parents had disowned me after I was incarcerated. I was their shame. My former friends had long since scattered. That day, the only constant was the familiar name on the visitor notification slip, Adrian. He used this method to remind me that everything I had now, I owed to him. On the back of my journal, I carved a few words with my fingernail. Adrian, Sophie, a debt of blood. That afternoon, the prison psychologist came to see me for the first time. Dr. Evans, a middle-aged man who looked gentle and harmless. He sat across from me, not asking if I was adjusting or if I needed help. Like the others, he just looked at me quietly for a moment, then pushed up his glasses and said something that seemed to come out of nowhere. Sometimes, one lies dormant only to strike with greater force. My heart leaped, but I remained impassive, merely looking up at him as if he were insane. He smiled, said nothing more, and ended the session. But I knew this man was not simple. Life in prison taught me a profound lesson. Trust is a luxury. Exploitation is the only way. 3 months until my release. The tally marks ID carved on the wall were a dense forest, each stroke steeped in 2 years of my blood and hatred. Dr. Evans began to see me more frequently. He would always, inadvertently, drop bits of information about the outside world. The stock market has been volatile lately. A major overseas acquisition by the Quinn Corporation seems to have hit a snag, he said, as if to himself, while organizing files. I was sanding a wooden craft, and my hands didn't pause. You seem to have a keen interest in business news, Dr. Evans, I said, my tone flat. He looked up, a hint of a probing smile on his lips. At my age, one must find ways to pass the time, not like you young people, with your whole lives ahead of you, he continued. I hear things aren't exactly solid within the corporation either. Several of the old guards are unhappy with Adrian's style, especially, Miss Sophie has been a bit too high-profile lately, causing quite a stir. I remained silent, only applying more pressure to the sandpaper. This information perfectly matched the fragments I had pieced together from other sources. Adrian's empire was not indestructible, and Sophie, the woman who had climbed over me, her glamorous life surely had countless hidden dangers. I sneered inwardly. The higher you climb, the harder you fall. Sophie, your good days are numbered. I was testing Dr. Evans, and he was testing me. We were like two chess players, carefully placing each piece on the board. I pretended to have no interest in his words, but I committed every syllable to memory, analyzing it over and over. Whose side was he on, friend or foe? Until the truth was revealed, anyone could be my enemy. 1 month until my release. Ava, a girl in my cell block, was getting out early. She was a pitiful girl, in for accidental injury, and had been bullied relentlessly. I had helped her out once, and ever since, she had followed me faithfully, calling me Sister Stella. The night before her release, we sat in a corner of the yard. I took a crumpled piece of paper from my pocket. On it was a random string of numbers and letters. When you get out, don't go home. Go to this address and find an internet cafe owner named Old Zhang. Give this to him, and he'll tell you what to do next. Ava took the paper and nodded firmly, her eyes red. Don't worry, Stella, I'll get it done. I looked at her, this girl nearly a decade younger than me, her face still youthful, but her eyes held a hardness forged by life. Ava, the world outside is more complicated than it is in here. Remember, don't trust anyone easily, not even Old Zhang. You have to learn to judge for yourself. She clutched the paper in her hand as if it were her only hope. I understand, Stella. I'll wait for you. A single look, and she understood. My first chess piece was now in place. A week before my release, I received the final visitor notification. The same name, Adrian. This time, for the first time, I stood before the glass for a full minute. I didn't pick up the phone. I just stood there, my back to him. I could feel the gaze on my back, more complex and heavy than ever before. It seemed to hold struggle, pain, 1,000 unspoken words. So what? Belated affection is cheaper than dirt. I straightened my spine and walked away without a backward glance. All I left him was a cold, resolute back. The night before my release, everything was silent. I looked at my reflection in a small piece of mirror I had hidden. Its edges smoothed down, pale, thin, but the eyes that were once gentle as water were now as cold and sharp as a frozen lake. The old Stella had died 2 years ago, the moment she was sentenced. The one who lived now was a new Stella, a specter born only for revenge. I took out the journal filled with my revenge plan and read it page by page, carefully, every step, every detail, every possible variable and countermeasure. I had rehearsed them in my mind 1,000 times. After the last page, I struck a match and set 2 years of my heart's blood ablaze. The flames danced, reflecting on my emotionless face. The paper curled, blackened, and turned to ash. I didn't need these anymore, because the entire plan was already carved into my bones, fused with my blood. The next morning, the guard handed me a thin piece of paper. Stella, you are released. I took the release form, the texture of the paper feeling unreal. My heart, after 2 years of silence, began to pound violently for the first time, not for freedom, but because the curtain was finally rising on my revenge. I walked out of the prison gates, and the blinding sunlight made me squint. The world was both strange and familiar. Skyscrapers, cars, pedestrians, the clamor flooded my ears, making them ache. Freedom, it turned out, was such a heavy thing. The area outside the prison was deserted. I had expected that. No one would be here to pick me up. Just as well, I didn't need anyone's welcome. I tugged at the ill-fitting, cheap jacket I was wearing, walked to the roadside, and hailed a taxi. The old district in the south of the city, please. It was the place I had Ava rent for me in advance. The top floor of an old apartment building, cheap, with a transient population, perfect for hiding. The room was Spartan. A bed, a table, a chair, that was it. But it was safe. This was my new beginning, my war room. I put in my new SIM card and turned on the phone. The screen lit up, and an encrypted message immediately appeared. I'm in position. I've also contacted Marcus. He's thrilled, said he's been waiting for this day for a long time. It was Ava. A cold smile finally touched my lips. The first pawn had landed exactly where it was supposed to be. Marcus was once the most brilliant project manager at Adrian's rival company, but Adrian had used dirty tricks to ruin him during a bidding war, leaving him disgraced. 4 years, he had struggled at the bottom, and his hatred would only be deeper than mine. A man with ability, hatred, and nothing to lose is the best kind of weapon. For the next few days, I locked myself in the room, using a second-hand laptop to frantically gather all the information I could on the Quinn Corporation, stock prices, financial reports, internal personnel changes, even gossip about Adrian and Sophie. In 2 years, the corporate giant seemed to have grown even larger, but the rust on its hull had also spread. The vice presidents were at odds, and several major investment projects had returns far below expectations, held together only by Adrian's iron fist. And Sophie, the woman who had climbed over me, had established herself as the lady of the Quinn Corporation. Her Sophie's Light Charity Foundation, packaged by the media, had made her the most dazzling philanthropic socialite. I looked at the news, at her smiling sweetly on Adrian's arm, and my stomach churned. You paved your glamorous path with my flesh and blood, Sophie. It's time that gorgeous robe of yours was stripped away. I contacted Ava through encrypted software and sent my first command. Have Marcus get ready. I want all the sales data for Quinn's Aura brand for this quarter. The more detailed the better. Also, find a few beauty bloggers with large followings online. I have a use for them. Aura was one of Quinn core brands targeting the youth market, a project Sophie had pushed for heavily. It was one of her achievements, but the brand was all style and no substance, over-marketed, with a very shaky foundation. I was going to attack what Sophie was most proud of. A few days later, Marcus sent the internal sales data for Aura through Ava, along with a detailed analysis report. This weapon was indeed fast and sharp. The numbers were much uglier than what was published in the financial reports. The return rate was shockingly high, and customer complaints were focused on product quality. I compiled this data into an alarming report and sent it anonymously to several beauty bloggers known for their exposés and brutal honesty. I said nothing, only attached a single line. Interested in a big story. After that, I began my second probe. Using an anonymous, heavily disguised overseas account, I mobilized a small amount of capital to launch a small-scale, short-selling attack on Quincore stock. The amount was not large enough to cause major waves, but it was enough for a sensitive hound like Adrian to catch an unusual scent. I wanted him to know that a pair of eyes was watching him from the darkness. I wanted him to be nervous, to be paranoid, to shift his attention away from a dead nobody like me. As expected, the financial news reported on it the next day. Quinn Corporation's stock price experienced abnormal fluctuations yesterday, suspected to be caused by malicious short selling from unknown funds. Quinn Corp has formed a special team to investigate. I sat in my shabby rental, looking at the calm and collected face of Adrian at the press conference on my laptop screen, and let out a cold laugh. Adrian, you're good, but you've underestimated the resolve of a woman who has crawled back from hell. You think your opponents are the wolves and tigers of the business world. No, your opponent is me, a demon of your own creation, living only for revenge. That evening, I changed into plain clothes, put on a hat and a mask, and went to an outdoor cafe across from the Quinn Corporation building. I needed to feel the presence of my enemy up close. The giant LED screen was playing the company's promotional video on a loop, Adrian's spirited face filling the entire screen. He was proclaiming to the world how magnificent his business empire was. He had no idea that his nightmare had already begun. Just as I was about to leave, a flashy red Porsche pulled over, the door opened, and a woman in a Chanel suit stepped out. It was Sophie. She was impeccably dressed, a perfect smile on her face, but after getting out, she glanced around warily. Then, the man in the driver's seat leaned out and gave her a quick kiss on the lips. That man was not Adrian. Almost instinctively, I raised my phone, zoomed in, and with a click, captured the scene clearly. Sophie, I accept this generous gift you've given me. My revenge plan now had another sharp blade. Adrian's investigative skills were formidable, but my counter-surveillance abilities were honed in the tightly controlled environment of prison. He deployed the Quinn Corporation's top information security team, but they only managed to trace the short-selling funds to an overseas shell company, hitting a wall of layered firewalls. This made him even more vigilant. A skilled, hidden enemy with an unknown motive was keeping him up at night, but he would never dream that this so-called mastermind was the woman he had personally sent to prison, the one who should hate him to the core, but whom he had almost completely forgotten. Stella. Revenge cannot be won by brute force alone. What I wanted was to break his spirit. I wanted him to watch as everything he was proud of crumbled in my hands. Piece by piece, I needed a new identity, one that would allow me to stand before him openly. A month later, a grand business gala was held in the city. Only the rich and powerful could get an invitation. I went too, not as Stella, but as Enye's representative of a mysterious, newly returned overseas fund. This identity was painstakingly forged by Ava through Marcus Network. A clean background, a perfect resume, flawless. That night, I wore a sleek, black dress and sophisticated, aloof makeup. I was no longer the gentle, smiling Stella who followed Adrian around. I stood in a corner of the gala, holding a glass of champagne, like a hunter coldly observing every well-dressed prey in the room. Adrian and Sophie were the center of attention. He was still handsome and imposing, the object of every woman's gaze. Sophie was like a proud peacock, clinging to his arm, basking in the envious looks of the crowd. What a perfect couple. I lowered my eyes to hide a flicker of scorn. The time was right. I approached a balding man who was in conversation. Mr. Wang, long time no see, I said with a smile, raising my glass. Mr. Wang was a major supplier for the Quinn Corporation and a notorious lecher. Before prison, I had negotiated with him several times on behalf of Quinn Corp and knew exactly what he was like. He was taken aback, clearly not recognizing me. And you are? My name is Anya. We met at an auction in Europe. Have you forgotten? I fabricated the story, but my tone was so confident that he began to doubt himself. Lechers usually have poor memories, especially of women they failed to conquer. He fell for it, immediately breaking into a greasy smile. Oh, yes, I remember now. Miss Anya, you're looking more beautiful than ever. I ignored the greed in his eyes and casually chatted about recent business trends, subtly revealing the immense power of the fund I represented and my strong interest in the domestic consumer market, especially the Aura brand. My voice wasn't loud, but it was enough for Adrian, who was schmoozing nearby, to hear. As expected, he looked over. His gaze lingered on my face for a full 3 seconds. It was a look of scrutiny, mixed with curiosity and confusion. He might have found me vaguely familiar, but the unfamiliar, cool face made him dismiss the thought. He simply took me for another woman trying to latch onto the Quinn Corporation. He didn't recognize me. Good. That was the first step. Halfway through the gala, I ran into Adrian. He was surrounded by several CEOs. I held my champagne glass, pretended to walk past him casually, and then accidentally bumped into one of them. My apologies, I said softly, my voice quiet but clear. Adrian froze. That voice. He whipped his head around to look at me, his eyes sharp, but I had already turned away, leaving him with only a slender, resolute back. I could feel his gaze, like a needle, on my back. Adrian, are you starting to have doubts? That's right. I will plant a seed of suspicion in your heart, and let it slowly take root, sprout, and grow into a towering tree that will keep you awake at night. The next day, I received a message from Ava. Stella, Adrian has people looking into you. I looked at the flawless, fabricated profile of Anya on my computer screen and smiled. Investigate all you want. The deeper you dig, the deeper you'll fall. At the same time, the dirt I had fed to the beauty bloggers began to ferment. A blogger with millions of followers released a review video with a simple, brutal title, spent a fortune testing the entire Aura line, and the result, this year's biggest dud, bar none. In the video, the blogger tore apart Aura's products, from the packaging and ingredients to the performance. The fatal blow was the screenshot she included of the internal data I had provided, showing the high return rates and customer complaints. It caused an uproar. The video quickly went viral. Aura false advertising. Aura trash product. Sophie get out of business. Countless duped consumers flooded the comments section, tearfully recounting their experiences. Aura's reputation completely collapsed overnight. Sophie panicked. Her proud achievement had become the biggest stain on her career. She started frantically deleting posts, hiring PR firms, and even trying to bribe the blogger, but she didn't know that the blogger, and the several marketing accounts that followed suit, had already been protected by Marcus with a higher price. Sophie's PR efforts not only failed but also triggered an even greater backlash from the public. The more she struggled, the deeper she sank. Quinn Core stock plummeted. Adrian was overwhelmed, and I received a phone call that was both unexpected and inevitable. It was from Sophie. She had somehow gotten the private number of Anya. The moment I answered, her trademark voice, a mix of fragility and arrogance, came through. Miss Anya, I presume. This is Sophie. I think we need to meet. I looked out the window toward the Quinn building, a playful smile in my voice. Of course, the real show was just beginning. We met in a private room at a high-end club. Sophie still maintained her exquisite and elegant appearance, but the persistent annoyance in her brow ruined the perfect image she had so carefully crafted. She got straight to the point, pushing a check across the table. Miss Anya, I know your fund is involved in the recent trouble with Aura. Here is 10 million. As long as you stop now and issue a public clarification, this will be the end of it. She was still the same, thinking money could solve everything. I looked at the check and laughed. 10 million. I picked it up, twirling it between my fingers. Miss Sophie, are you trying to get rid of a beggar? Sophie's face instantly darkened. Miss Anya, don't be too greedy. Offending the Quinn Corporation will do you no good. Is that so? I leaned forward, getting closer to her, and lowered my voice. But I heard that the Aura project was one you pushed through against all opposition. Now that there's such a huge mess, hasn't Mr. Quinn lost his temper with you? Sophie's pupils contracted. I continued slowly. I also heard that the old board members have disliked you for a long time. This incident gives them the perfect excuse to attack. What do you think would happen if Mr. Quinn, in order to appease the masses, threw you out as a scapegoat? That would be interesting. Every word I said hit her where it hurt. Her pride was built on Adrian's affection and trust, wasn't it? I wanted her to know that in the face of massive profits, that affection was worthless. Who are you? Sophie's voice became shrill, her elegance gone. Who I am doesn't matter. I tore the check into pieces in front of her and tossed them on the floor. What matters, Miss Sophie, is that your good days are over. I stood up, looking down at her face, which was twisted with anger. Go back and tell Adrian that I'm not interested in this mess of a brand. However, I am very interested in destroying it. With that, I turned and left, leaving her alone in the room like an enraged lioness. Sophie was infuriated. She began a frenzied counterattack. She used her connections to spread rumors about me, saying I was a woman of unknown origin trying to blackmail Quinn Corp. She even hired some thugs to teach me a lesson. But she underestimated me. The men she sent were taken care of by a few retired soldiers hired by Ava before they even got close to me. And the rumors she spread only made the name of the mysterious investor Anya more well-known in our circles. Everyone knew that a fearless woman had taken on the Quinn Corporation, and Adrian Quinn's woman. I used Sophie's foolishness to my advantage, making alliances with several business partners who had been suppressed by Quinn Corp. We had a common enemy. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. The rift between Adrian and Sophie grew wider. According to the mole Marcus had planted inside Quinn Corp., Adrian had a massive fight with Sophie over the Aura debacle. Adrian was a businessman. He could tolerate Sophie's tantrums and vanity, but he could not tolerate her foolishness and incompetence causing huge losses for the company. His patience with her was running out, but that wasn't enough. I needed to add more fuel to the fire. I had Ava anonymously send the photos I had taken of Sophie kissing the strange man, along with a detailed report I had compiled on how she had been embezzling from her Sophie's Light Charity Foundation for her lavish lifestyle, to Adrian's biggest competitor. It's better to use such material to kill with a borrowed knife than to keep it for oneself. As expected, within 3 days, Sophie's scandals were everywhere. High society secrets, Quinn Corp future mistress suspected of cheating, caught in passionate kiss with mystery man in car, exposing philanthropist Sophie's lavish life. Where did the donations really go? Photos, evidence, everything was there. Public opinion exploded. Sophie's perfect first love image was shattered beyond repair. She went from an envied philanthropist to a despised, hypocritical gold digger. Quinn Corporation's stock plummeted again. This time, the look on Adrian's face must have been priceless. The woman he loved most had put a nationally known dunce cap on his head. He had become the biggest joke in the country. I sat in my rental, eating instant noodles and watching the online vitriol against Sophie and Adrian, laughing until tears streamed down my face. Adrian, you sent me to prison for her. Now, the very woman you protected with all your might has given you the loudest slap in the face. How does it feel? Sophie was completely finished. The Quinn Corp board held an emergency meeting and forcibly removed her from all her positions in the company. Her charity foundation was also placed under investigation. She had fallen from the clouds and landed hard in the mud. She called me countless times. I didn't answer once. She waited for me outside my hotel like a madwoman. When the security guard stopped her, she screamed curses at me from across the gate, all semblance of grace gone. I just stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of my hotel room, watching her coldly, watching her go from hysterical to sobbing, and finally collapsing on the ground like a stray dog abandoned by its owner. Pathetic. Just then, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered. A voice I knew to my very bones, suppressing a volcano of rage, came through the line. Miss Anya, we need to talk. It was Adrian. I smiled, my voice cold and mocking. The show is just getting started, Mr. Quinn. What's the hurry? The Quinn Corporation was in turmoil, both internally and externally. The stock price continued to fall, and several major deals were put on hold due to the scandal. The old board members were starting to make their moves. Adrian's life must have been very difficult recently. I saw his latest photo on the cover of a financial magazine. In just half a month, he had become gaunt, his former sharp, spirited energy replaced by fatigue and gloom. I felt no sympathy, only the thrill of revenge. That night, I received a call from Dr. Evans. It was the first time he had contacted me since my release. Is it convenient to meet? There's something I think you'll be interested in. His voice was still gentle, but it held a tone that brooked no refusal. We met at a quiet tea house. He still had that refined air, as if the prison psychologist was just one of his many disguises. He skipped the pleasantries and pushed a manila envelope across the table. Take a look. I opened it. Inside was a copy of a document. The title made my breath catch in my throat. Risk Assessment Report for Quinn Corporation's Secret Acquisition of Starfire Dynamics. The date was from 3 years ago. Starfire Dynamics. I remembered that name. It was the last project I had been in charge of before my imprisonment. Quinn Corp was planning to acquire this highly promising AI company, and I was the project lead. Later, the embezzlement charge was discovered from the accounts of this very project. I flipped through the document, page by page, my heart sinking with each one. The report detailed how a conventional acquisition of Starfire would pose significant legal and public relations risks, as its core technology allegedly infringed on an international patent, and the solution proposed on the final page was stark. Fabricate a financial scandal involving the project lead Stella to have her imprisoned, thus disrupting the normal acquisition process. Subsequently, use a third-party shell company to maliciously acquire the now chaotic Starfire Dynamics at an extremely low price, and secretly transfer its core technology and patents to a subsidiary of Quinn Corp. My hands began to tremble uncontrollably. So that's how it was. From the very beginning, I was just a pawn. A pawn that could be sacrificed at any time for the benefit of the Quinn Corporation. My imprisonment was not just because of Sophie's jealousy. It was because Quinn Corp needed a scapegoat to complete this dirty acquisition. I had always thought that Adrian had cruelly pushed me into the abyss for his first love. Now, it seemed I was wrong. Or rather, Sophie was just a pretext. A convenient excuse to cover up the greater interests and conspiracy behind it all. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. The pain so intense I could barely breathe. Hate. An overwhelming wave of hatred threatened to consume me, but it was followed by an icy, extreme clarity. My target for revenge could not be just Adrian and Sophie. It had to be the entire Quinn Corporation. This corrupt business empire built on countless dirty deals and sacrifices. Where did you get this document? I looked up, staring directly at Dr. Evans. He met my gaze calmly. My goal is the same as yours, to bring down the Quinn family. He paused, then continued. Although Adrian is the CEO, he doesn't call all the shots, especially not in front of his father, Donovan, Adrian's father, the founder of the Quinn Corporation, the man who had long since retired behind the scenes but still held the entire family's fate in his hands. The one who truly approved that acquisition plan was Donovan. Dr. Evans' words exploded in my mind like a thunderclap. I had always thought my enemy was Adrian. Now I realized that Adrian was perhaps just a tool in his father's hands. My path to revenge suddenly became clearer, and also much more difficult. I was not just up against a man blinded by love, but a cunning, ruthless business tycoon. Late that night, I received a recording from Ava. It was secretly recorded by a waiter at the club Adrian frequented. The background was noisy, but Adrian's drunken, remorseful voice was chillingly clear. I had no choice. I had to protect her. My father. He's capable of anything. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Stella. The recording ended there. I listened to those words over and over, a mix of emotions churning inside me. Protect me. He sent me to prison, destroyed my life, and he calls that protecting me. Adrian, what else are you hiding? I decided to temporarily halt my direct attacks on Adrian. I would aim my spear at the real serpent, hidden in the shadows, Donovan. I had Ava and Marcus use all their resources to dig into Donovan's past. This old fox, who had dominated the business world for decades, surely had more than just the Starfire deal staining his hands. As expected, within 2 weeks, a thick investigation report was on my desk. Donovan's rise to power was a history of crime, embezzlement of state assets, collusion with officials, malicious suppression of competitors, and even connections to several unsolved criminal cases. Reading the shocking words in the report, a chill ran up my spine. The Quinn family was far dirtier than I had imagined. Just as I was about to make my move, I sensed something was wrong. Strange, furtive faces began to appear around my apartment building. I started receiving silent, harassing phone calls. It was Donovan. The old fox had scented danger. He was fighting back. One evening, I returned to my apartment and found signs that the lock had been tampered with. I didn't go in. I immediately turned, went downstairs, and called Ava from a public phone booth on the corner. We're moving up the plan. Distribute what we have to Donovan's old friends. Tell them it's time for revenge. Donovan had made countless enemies. There were many people whose lives he had ruined. They were just missing an opportunity, a leader. And now, I was handing them that opportunity. I wanted Donovan to know what it felt like to be besieged by a pack of wolves. The next day, Quinn Corporation's stock began to plummet without warning. Several major suppliers with deep ties to the company suddenly announced they were severing their contracts. Banks began to call in their loans. The corporation's cash flow was suddenly in jeopardy. I had torn a huge hole in the web Donovan had woven, from the inside out. He surely hadn't expected me to retaliate this way. That afternoon, a black Bentley pulled up in front of my building. The door opened, and the person who stepped out was Adrian. He came straight upstairs and pounded on my door. Anya, come out. I know it's you. I opened the door and looked at him coldly. His eyes were bloodshot, his face a mask of anger and pain. Why are you doing this? Why are you targeting my father? He burst in, grabbing my shoulders and shaking me. This was our first true, direct confrontation. I let him hold me, my voice devoid of any warmth. Adrian, you're only asking me why now. I looked him straight in the eye. 2 years ago, when you sent me to prison, did you ever think about why? He froze, his grip on my shoulders loosening unconsciously. You know everything I should know, and everything I shouldn't. I know it all. I pushed his hands away, taking a step back to put distance between us. Starfire dynamics, Donovan. And your ridiculous protection theory, Adrian. Do you take me for a fool? I threw the acquisition report at his face. Look at what your father has done. Look at how filthy your family is. Adrian stared at the scattered documents, his face turning deathly pale. He knew I had all the core secrets. What do you want? His voice trembled with a hint of despair. What do I want? I sneered. I want the Quinn family to pay for everything they've done. I want Donovan to be disgraced and rot in prison. You can't do that. Adrian became agitated. My father is old. He's old, so he can treat human lives as nothing. I cut him off sharply. What about the 730 days and nights I spent in prison? Who pitied me then? Our confrontation had reached a stalemate. Meanwhile, outside, the great ship of the Quinn family was sinking at a visible rate. I, along with the other Avengers, released Donovan's past scandals one by one through various channels. Public opinion was in an uproar. The man once portrayed by the media as a business titan was now a reviled pariah. The Quinn Corporation board, to save themselves, urgently dismissed Donovan from all his positions and publicly disassociated from him. The empire he had built was the first to cast him aside. Donovan had completely fallen. The day Donovan was taken away by the police for investigation, Adrian came to see me. He didn't drive, nor did he bring any bodyguards. He just stood alone, utterly dejected, in front of my apartment building. It was raining lightly, and he was soaked to the bone. A pathetic sight. I stood at the window, watching him coldly for a long time, before finally going downstairs. I didn't let him in. I just stood in front of him, holding an umbrella. You must be enjoying this, watching me become a laughingstock, he said, looking up. The rain streamed down his gaunt face, and I couldn't tell if it was rain or tears. Yes, I admitted frankly, I've waited 2 years for this day. He suddenly laughed, a sound full of despair and self-mockery, and as he laughed, this once proud and arrogant man suddenly dropped to his knees in front of me. Stella, I'm sorry. He knelt in the cold rain, looking up at me, the tears finally breaking free. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I looked at him, my heart a placid lake. If apologies worked, what would be the point of prisons? Adrian, stop this pitiful act. I will not forgive you. I know. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, he choked out. I just came today to tell you the whole truth. He knelt on the ground and, in broken sentences, told me the truth he had hidden for 2 years. When Donovan had decided to use dirty tactics to acquire Starfire Dynamics and had chosen me as the sacrifice, Adrian had opposed it. He had argued with his father, fought back, but it was all useless. Donovan had threatened him with my family. If he didn't comply, I would face not just prison, but something far worse, disappearing from the face of the earth. Donovan was ruthless and capable of anything. Adrian said he had no choice but to protect me in this way. He had fabricated the evidence and sent me to prison himself, to get me out of Donovan's sight and into a relatively safe place. He thought that after 2 years, once things had blown over, he could get me out and compensate me. He visited every month to let me know he hadn't given up on me. He sat behind that cold glass, watching my resolute back, his heart being torn to shreds. He wanted to tell me the truth, but he didn't dare, because he knew that as long as Donovan was free, I would never be safe. I listened to his confession quietly, finding it all utterly absurd. So, I spent 2 years in prison, had my reputation destroyed, my family torn apart, and am supposed to be grateful for your protection? I asked coldly. No, that's not it. He shook his head in agony. I know nothing I say can make up for it. I was wrong from the very beginning. I shouldn't have been so cowardly. I shouldn't have given in to him. What's the use of saying all this now? Looking at him kneeling in the mud, so humbled, the overwhelming hatred in my heart actually loosened its grip slightly. So, he wasn't entirely evil. He was just a pathetic coward, bound by family and profit. But I would not forgive him. The damage was done. It could never be erased. Adrian, I will not forgive you, I said, word by word, but I can give you a chance at redemption. He looked up sharply, as if grabbing onto a last lifeline. Tell me. I'll do anything you ask. I want you to help me completely destroy the Quinn Corporation. My voice was as cold as ice. That is your only path to salvation. He was stunned, then gave a bitter smile. All right, he agreed, to atone for his sins. He chose to personally destroy his family's legacy, to join me in burying that corrupt empire once and for all. He gave me all of the Quinn Corporation's top-secret files, financial loopholes, and all of Donovan's illegal business chains. With this, the Quinn Corporation had no hope of recovery. Just as we were preparing for the final assault, Sophie, a woman I had almost forgotten, reappeared. She had somehow found out that Adrian had betrayed his family to work with me. Like a madwoman, she drove her car straight into my apartment building. Fortunately, Ava had received a tip-off, and we evacuated in time. Looking at the wrecked Porsche below and the crazed Sophie being led away by the police, I could only find it laughable. This woman, so foolish to the very end, she had run out of tricks. Adrian and I launched our final offensive. The fatal evidence he provided was released to the media and regulatory agencies in strategic waves. The entire business world was shaken. The dark underbelly of the Quinn Corporation was peeled back, layer by layer, and displayed for all to see. Tax evasion, financial fraud, collusion with officials, even murder. Each crime was more shocking than the last. The media coverage was relentless, nailing the Quinn Corporation to a pillar of shame. The once glorious business empire was now infamous. Massive fines and class action lawsuits followed. The stock price hit rock bottom and eventually became worthless paper. On its 30th anniversary, the once brilliant empire officially declared bankruptcy. The monolith had crumbled. Donovan was sentenced to life in prison. Sophie, for her various crimes, was also incarcerated. They had all paid the price for their sins. The day the dust settled, Adrian asked to see me. At the same cafe we used to frequent, he pushed a file across the table. "This is everything I own, including the old family estate. It's all yours now." He was giving up everything, his way of repaying his debt to me. I didn't accept it. "I don't want your money. What I want, I'll earn myself." He looked at me for a long time, then nodded. "I'm leaving," he said. "Leaving this place. Going somewhere no one knows me. To start over." "Good." He stood up and gave me a deep bow. "Stella, take care." With that, he turned and left, without looking back. I watched his back disappear around the corner, an indescribable feeling in my heart. My revenge was complete, but I felt no elation, only a vast emptiness. A few days later, under the identity of Anya, I acquired some of the valuable assets from the liquidated Quinn Corporation and founded my own company Phoenix Corp. At the company's launch, for the first time, I stood before the media spotlight under my real identity, Stella. I calmly recounted my experiences over the past 2 years, the story of the great injustice from beginning to end. I cleared my name and won back my dignity. After the press conference, Ava and Dr. Evans came to my side. Ava had become my most capable right-hand woman, the vice president of Phoenix Corp., and Dr. Evans finally revealed his true identity to me. His father had been Donovan's best partner, only to be framed and ruined by him. He had been lying in wait all these years for a chance at revenge. My appearance had given him that hope. We were natural allies. I stood in the top floor office of Phoenix Corp., looking down at the city that had once taken everything from me and was now at my feet. I, Stella, was back. As a queen, I became a legend in the business world, a woman who walked out of prison and single-handedly toppled a business empire. My name, Stella, frequently appeared on the covers of major financial magazines. The people who had once shunned me, even kicked me when I was down, now scrambled to flatter and curry favor with me. I stood at the pinnacle of power, enjoying unprecedented glory, but in the dead of night, a vast loneliness and emptiness would consume me. Revenge had been my only reason to live. Now that it was complete, I felt like a sailor who had been adrift at sea for too long and suddenly found land, lost and without direction. Dr. Evans seemed to sense my confusion. He told me that Adrian had settled in a remote town abroad. He no longer worked in business but was a librarian at a community library, living a simple, quiet life. He never remarried, remaining alone. One day, I received an anonymous international package. There was no letter inside, only a photograph. It was a picture of a field of sunflowers in full bloom. They had once been my favorite flower. I stared at the photo for a long time, then put it in the deepest part of a drawer. I began to think about what my life should be after revenge. Should I continue to indulge in the game of power, or find a new direction? I handed over most of the company's affairs to Ava and Dr. Evans, my most trusted partners. I used a portion of my wealth to establish a charitable foundation dedicated to helping women who, like me, had suffered injustice and were left with no way out. I hoped to use my power to help them find a new life. I began to re-examine my own life. I would no longer live for hatred. I would live for myself. I started learning new languages, traveling the world, broadening my horizons. On a sunny afternoon, I sat alone in the cafe where Adrian and I used to meet, and ordered my favorite latte. Thinking of the past, my heart was calm. The love and hate had all faded with time. A few years later, at an international business summit in Switzerland, I unexpectedly ran into Adrian. He was there as a representative of his local community for a charity event at the summit. He was thinner and more weathered, but he exuded an unprecedented sense of peace and stability. He saw me in the crowd, froze for a moment, and then gave me a faint smile. In that smile, there was no resentment, no hatred, only the relief of seeing an old acquaintance. During a break, we had a quiet conversation by the shore of Lake Geneva, like two old friends who hadn't seen each other in a long time. "You're doing very well," he said, looking at me sincerely. "I see you in the news often. I'm proud of you." "You too," I said, looking at his simple cotton shirt. "It seems you've found the life you wanted." He smiled and nodded. "Stella, He seemed to want to say something, but in the end, it was just a sigh. "I have paid the price for what happened back then. Now, I just want to say, I wish you happiness. I stopped hating you a long time ago," I said calmly, "but I will never love you again. Adrian, between us, there is only closure." His eyes were a little red, but he still smiled and nodded. "I understand." That was the last time we ever spoke. We officially said goodbye to the past. From then on, we went our separate ways, worlds apart, never to meet again. My heart was finally, completely free. I was no longer trapped by the shadows of the past. I had become a truly independent, powerful woman. I wrote my autobiography, Phoenix Rising. It unexpectedly became a bestseller, inspiring countless women struggling in difficult situations. At the end of the book, I wrote, "Hatred will eventually dissipate. Only self-growth and inner strength are eternal." My business empire continued to expand in the following years. Phoenix Corp became a true commercial empire, spanning multiple sectors, and I, Stella, became its sole queen. I no longer pursued mere profit but dedicated my power to creating a fairer, more transparent business environment. The foundation I established helped thousands of women escape their plight and find new life. Ava and Dr. Evans also found their own success and happiness. We were each other's staunchest allies and closest family. As for Sophie and Donovan, they would spend the rest of their lives behind cold, iron bars. Their fate was a warning to the world that all evil will eventually be brought to justice. My story was adapted into a television series that became a national phenomenon. Many people asked me in interviews if I had any regrets. I would just smile and say nothing. There is no turning back in life. Every step counts. It was the pain, the betrayal, the struggle that shaped who I am today. I stood on the stage at the Global Women's Leadership Summit, facing elite women from all over the world, sharing my story and values in fluent English. I emphasized the power of women, the importance of economic and personal independence. When my speech ended, the applause was thunderous. I did not, like a princess in a fairy tale, end up marrying a prince. I chose a much broader stage for my life. My world was exciting because of me. My name, Stella, became a symbol of an era. It represented resilience, wisdom, and an unyielding spirit.